Hello, and welcome to your Believing Hard podcast for January 25th, 2023. I'm your host, Mario Waith. You can find me across the internet, all at Mario Waith. Links to all my socials and every article I'll be discussing, as always, will be in the show notes. This week I'll be discussing unions, Sony stuff, and the layoffs that have wrecked the gaming and tech industries this week. But let's start off with some good news. Christine Love just announced that the DLC for Get in the Car Loser is releasing February 13th. I'm really excited and I think you should be too. It's a really good game, it's only $10 and the DLC is only 10 more. Check it out. Now, I've been really down on the concept of PSVR2. It's really pricey, it doesn't seem to have that many games, and it's not backwards compatible to boot. But hey, they recently announced their launch lineup for their February 22nd release, so let's go through them. So I've pulled up the list here. There are a total of 37 games listed out of this Polygon article. I'm not excited. I'm not going to be purchasing this, but there are new titles for PSVR2, including Horizon Call of the Mountain, which I guess that might be alright. The first Horizon was alright. I haven't gotten to the second one yet, but whatever. The Dark Pictures Switchback, which I think is one of those spooky games, not by Supermassive, I think. Thondivision 2020X, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, Chapter 2 Retribution. So you got 2 horror games out of the 4. Alright. There are some new indie games, I don't know why they're separated in this list, but The Light Brigade, Cosmonious High, Pistol Whip, Tentacular. And those are the 8 new games that are going to be on PSVR 2. Then there are free updates or upgrades, so if you have Gran Turismo 7, Resident Evil Village, No Man's Sky, NFL Pro Era, Puzzling Places, or Synth Riders, those will all be compatible with the PSVR 2 from the get-go. So that is at least nice for people who own those already. I, of course, own none of them. Then these are ones that have PSVR 2 versions, but you're going to have to pay, I think, $10 to get the new version, which is Creed Rise to Glory Championship Edition, Res Infinite, Tetris Effect, Thumper, and Vacation Simulator. Now, I heard amazing things about Tetris Effect. I would love to be able to play that in VR, and I love Thumper on my Switch. I couldn't imagine how great it would be in VR. Either way, I'm not going to be able to play either of them because I don't have a PSVR 2, and I have Thumper on PlayStation 4 and PSVR 1, but I would then have to spend $10 more. It's stupid. It's dumb. Now, a PSVR 2 port of non-VR titles Before Your Eyes is coming to PSVR 2. I've heard great things about this. Apparently, it's a really heartbreaking narrative experience. It's also free on the Netflix app, I think, if you have that set up. But I bet it'll be a good experience in VR. And then here's some other VR games that are just going to be ported to PSVR 2, including Altair Breaker, After the Fall, Cities VR, Demio, Dischronia, Chronos Alternate, Job Simulator, Jurassic World Aftermath Collection, Kayak VR Mirage, Kizuna AI Touch the Beat, The Last Clockwinder, Moss and Moss Book 2 Remaster, Pavlov VR, Res Infinite, Sing in the Smoke, The Tale of Onogoro, What the Bat, Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge Enhanced Edition, and Zenith the Last City. I'm sure some of these are real good. The Job Simulator I heard was great. What the Bat looked really fun. I don't know, if you're gonna buy it, I guess you're gonna have some stuff to play. I've heard Moss and Moss Book 2 are really nice to play. Res Infinite, which I feel like was on this list twice. It was. Okay. And also Crossfire, Sierra Squad, and Hello Neighbor Search and Rescue, 2 games I have no idea what they are, also going to be at the launch, maybe not at the launch. They were not included in the launch window lineup published by Sony on whatever past Thursday this is from. Either way, PSVR 2, it's still coming out, and there are still not enough games, especially since PSVR 2 is going to be a closed system. You're only going to be able to play it on a PS5. It doesn't really feel worth it. Maybe if it was half the price, I'd be more optimistic about it. Or if it was backwards compatible, I would be all in. But that's a rote point at this point. They're never going to do that. Not so much follow-up from last episode, more of a premonition I had. Last week I called for the $69 billion Microsoft Activision acquisition to go through, but then, right after it goes through, Microsoft and all other tech giants should be broken up by the government into smaller companies. Well, it turns out the U.S. Department of Justice, as well as 8 other U.S. states, are suing Google and parent company Alphabet over antitrust allegations. Now, this is specifically because of their ad technology business and it allegedly being a monopoly. It said allegedly in the article. It is clearly a monopoly, but that's beside the point. But any start is a good start. Bring these giants to the ground. I do not like Google. I do not like Microsoft. I do not like Facebook. I do not like Amazon. I do not like any of these big companies. So any attention from the government to make them be less horrible is good in my book. And yeah, it's just ads. I don't like ads in the first place. But it is true that Google definitely has a monopoly on ads. Google, of course, is like, no, we don't have a monopoly. We're the good guys here. We're going to tamper innovation in this space. In the ad space, shut up, Google. Something should be done about them. And this is a start, I suppose. Anyway, on to actual follow-up from last week. I brought up how Paris Ubisoft employees were set to strike over nasty remarks from CEO Yves Guillemot. Well, Guillemot originally said he was going to have a face-to-face Q&A meeting with said workers, and then cancelled right before the meeting started. What a coward. I hope the strike goes through. Yves Guillemot does not seem like a good guy. He did apologize for some of the nasty comments he made, but he still made them in the first place, and it really feels like the only reason he apologized is because he got so much backlash. So, whatever, and I reiterate, what a coward. Speaking of the proletariat working class, workers of the video game studio Proletariat announced a few weeks back of their intention to unionize. I think they did it towards the end of December. Well, some bad news. The leadership behind the video game studio Proletariat apparently were hurt by the idea that the working class would want a union. So the leadership was not going to willingly accept the union, and apparently it did enough scaremongering, so the union election has been withdrawn. And quoting from user @EthanGatch, quote, "They blame CEO Seth Sivak for treating the union drive as a personal betrayal and holding meetings that, quote, demoralized and disempowered the group," end quote, which is to say the CEO got hurt and I guess did some threatening language if a union were to form, and I guess the union leaders had to back off. Some people in the company still want to unionize, but their leaders being a jerk about it. It's called Proletariat. You named your studio Proletariat, the working class, and you don't want your workers to unionize. What kind of cognitive dissonance do you have? You think, oh, well, the other people can the other working class can unionize, but I'm one of the good leaders. I'm one of the good bosses. Shut up. What a coward. But not all union news this week was bad, at least. Even amid massive layoffs, the QA members for ZeniMax Studios are still hard at work to bargain for fair contracts, as well as alternatives to layoffs, and more power to them. Apparently, ZeniMax wasn't hit by the Microsoft layoffs I'll be talking about in just a sec, but even still, I'm glad they are still have a welcome spot at the bargaining table and are trying to develop a good contract for all the QA workers there, and hopefully they can lead by example to any other unions that are going to struggle to start up in this really hard-pressed industry. And last point on unions, with the release and apparent huge success of The Last of Us HBO show, the co-creator of The Last of Us game wasn't credited. At all. Bruce Straley worked as a game director and world builder alongside Neil Druckmann that left the company some time ago, but he obviously made huge contributions to the world, the same world that is now being adapted into this very popular show. And while I find it, interesting that it took being personally affected to call for them, Straley is now saying perhaps more unions in the gaming industry would help this sort of situation. And I largely agree, obviously at this point. I mean, his motivations for saying this are a little too self-motivated for me, but no matter why someone decides to call for them, I'll always support more unions across the board. Speaking of The Last of Us, it sure is a good thing they released that Part 1 remake a few months ago. Sales of Part 1, 2, and 1 Remastered for the PS4 have skyrocketed due to the popularity of the show. So, good job, Sony. Make your money. I'll be starting The Last of Us show tonight, so I don't even have any opinions on it just yet, but I mean, it made sense why they re-released Part 1 back when they did a few months ago, and they're reaping the rewards for it, I guess. Have I mentioned I don't like The Last of Us that much? Moving on, despite having never played it, Persona 3 is one of my most favorite games. I also really enjoyed the Persona 4 Let's Play I watched too. And the fact that 3 Portable and 4 are both on modern consoles is really cool. I should get to playing them eventually. It's unfortunate then that the translation teams for the French, Italian, German, and Spanish localizations were not included in the credits. They had a bunch of work on this game. There is so much text in Persona. They deserve to be credited for their work. Apparently the contractor studio Keywords Studio has a policy to not credit any contractors or localizers that work on a project. What? That's just dumb. Right now the credits only have a producer and 3 managers listed, and that's it. I don't care who you work for, whether you work there full time or not, whether you don't work there for the full duration of the game development. If you work on something, a game, a movie, a TV show, whatever, you should be listed in the credits. You worked on it. Your hard work is in this thing. You should be able to have your name on it. I don't care if they're contractors for a translation team, put their gosh darn name in the credits. Sega should have pushed for it more. Keyword Studios shouldn't have this stupid policy. It is absurd. It is so absurd that you have a whole team of localizers who are just completely left out to dry. And more bad news, there have been a lot of layoffs across the video game space this week. Starting with video game journalism/critique, fandom had a surprise all-hands meeting on January 19th where leadership informed 40 to 50 people across Giant Bomb and Gamespot that they were to be let go immediately. This one hit hard. As a pretty big fan of Giant Bomb, I was so excited to see Jess Voidberger O'Brien join the staff in 2021, and she was unceremoniously let go, along with Jason A. Stryker, who had been with Giant Bomb since 2014. Both just gone, without any notice. Absolutely disgusting. Layoffs have also affected the Jeff Bezos-owned Washington Post, where the Gaming Wing launcher is also being shuttered. Good old richest man in the world can't afford video game journalists, I guess. If there is a bright side to this one, and it's hard to find a bright side to 20 people losing their livelihoods, at least they were unionized and it guarantees them a couple weeks' notice and a severance package. So they're all still employed for now and will be receiving something at the end, but it's still crummy. The whole video game journalism landscape, especially after this week, especially after the past few months, it's never been more tenuous. At this point, it's not scary if the next layoffs are going to occur. It's more scary when the next layoffs are going to occur. And it's a shame. But that's not all the people who lost their jobs this week. Microsoft is laying off 10,000 people, including some from Xbox studios like Starfield's Bethesda and Halo's 343 Industries. The latter was apparently really gutted, according to Jason Schreier on Twitter. This also led to 343 tweeting out that they'll still be making Halo, don't worry gamers, or something equally tone-deaf. I get they felt they need to say something, but a bunch of their colleagues are being let go. 10,000 people are being let go, and they just tweet out like they're still the Halo people. Have some tact, 343 social media managers. The next day it came out that Riot Games, the League of Legends folks, are laying off 46 people. This is aimed mainly at their recruiting staff, their esports divisions, as well as support and HR. And then the next day, Google announced they'd be laying off 12,000 people as well. And while this one isn't game related, it's still incredibly substantial to the tech world. 12,000 people is so many people. And while it's a small percentage of the people Google employs, it's still so many people. It's so many people at Microsoft, and even the smaller numbers like the 46 from Riot, or the 20-some from the Washington Post, or the 20-some from Giant Bomb and GameSpot. My heart goes out to everyone affected. I hope each and every one will be able to land on their feet. And that'll be the end of this week's episode. I'll be skipping what I've been doing this week. It's pretty news heavy already, and it would be a bit tone deaf of me to talk about the fun things I've been doing or the cool stuff I've been buying after talking about literally thousands of workers losing their job. So with that being said, if you'd like to keep up on anything I'm doing, all my links are in the show notes. I'm at MarioWaith everywhere, as well as links to all the article I'm referencing are also in the show notes. Please follow me if you would like to, leave a rating somewhere. I hear iTunes ratings are good, or just leave a thumbs up or a comment on a YouTube video version of this podcast if you'd like. I've been MarioWaith. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.